are their own position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
It's Wednesday. It's 9 o'clock. It's Penny. So what does that mean? Oh yeah! Another episode of Haunted Histories, courtesy of Parasearch Radio, is coming your way. On tonight's show, we are chatting to a real-life TV star. Oh yes, we are! Mr. Chris Howley of Ghost Chasers fame. It really is not what you know in this game, I tell you. We're going to be talking to Chris shortly about all things, well, ghostly, I guess. But before that, the topic of choice today is the very horrible and very nasty, and no, I'm not being sarcastic, Amelia Dyer. If you haven't heard of her, you won't forget her after I tell you what she did. But before that, does anyone remember the show I did a few weeks ago on Fort Horsted? Well, I went to investigate there last week with the awesome Fright Nights London. I was lucky enough to use my charm on the site manager to get him to show me the World War I and World War II pencil graffiti that is on some of the whitewashed walls. This graffiti is so fragile that all it would take is to brush up against it and it's gone forever. But it was quite awe-inspiring to realise I was reading something that a young man had written some 100 years ago or so, before he went to fight at the front and, most likely, didn't return. The soldier I used as an example last week had originally been part of the Middlesex Regiment, and we actually found Middlesex Regiment graffiti, which quite blew my mind, if I'm honest. Sadly, due to the fragility of these artefacts and the difficulty in preserving them, it's not possible to see them as the general public as general public, if you get what I mean, without prior organisation. But I was really honoured to have seen it. Hi Chris, thanks for tuning in. Hope you can hear okay. Horsted did produce a few other delights as well, apart from a very personal encounter for one of us. I heard heavy breathing in one of the tunnels, and it wasn't me or my companion. We had a couple of soldiers come through to us. In fact, I've looked up one of the names, and he was in the...
And do not necessarily reflect the official policy or...
There is a problem with the signal tonight. It keeps having to refresh itself. I'll just keep talking, but if you just keep refreshing it, if you lose it, you should be okay. I'm not sure whether it's the wind or something, but it's throwing the signal out quite a bit. So apologies for that. Anyway, so I am live again tonight, by the way. That's hence the signal is coming and going. So the spirit box. Well, I wasn't alone when the voice was coming through, and there were quite a few other people there, and the answers were intelligent replies and not just random words, which made it feel very, very real. For example, when I asked this voice on the spirit box how many children she had killed, the female voice laughed and said hundreds. When I asked her if she had had any help, she said yes, her daughter. When I asked her how she killed the majority of children, she said lace. That was something I thought was strange, as she had used sort of dressmaking tape. But when I looked into it, dressmaking tape was sometimes known as dressmaker's lace. Was I scared that a murderer was talking to me? Honestly? No. I wasn't her type. But did I have trouble staying calm and not calling her every name under the sun? Yes. But why does this woman anger me so much? Perhaps I should just tell her story, eh? Dyer, or Amelia Hobley, as she was originally known, was born in Bristol in 1837. Some accounts do say 1838. Her exact date of birth seems to be slightly open to debate. She had a reasonably cultured upbringing, did quite well at school, could read and write, until her mum died of madness related to typhus, of which Amelia had to nurse her through as a teenager. This may have been some kind of trigger to her future murderous tendencies, but she left home and went to train as a nurse and then subsequently became a midwife. She had also married during this time to a gentleman 35 years older than her, a George Thomas, A second marriage would eventually follow on George's death to William Dyer. But after George's death, Amelia decided she needed money, and fate had the evil hand in introducing her to a midwife called Ellen Dane. Dane used to run a type of boarding house for women who were, as they used to say, in trouble. These women would move in when they began to show and stay until the baby was born. Dane would then obtain a fee to have the child adopted, although how much care she took of them whilst they were waiting to be adopted is something I would not even want to hazard a guess at. It was Dane who started to teach Dyer how to make money from the practice known as baby farming. But how did baby farming actually come about? Well, back in the 1800s, if you were a single woman with an illegitimate child, there was no respectable career for you. You were either on the streets, homeless, or you worked as a prostitute. Many women were forced into illegal and dangerous abortions or handing their child over to a baby farmer who would either demand a weekly fee to care for the child or a one-off fee to place the child up for adoption. How desperate must these women have been? Hi, Kerry! And most of this desperation was down to the 1834 Poor Law Amendment Act, which took away the obligation of fathers of illegitimate children to provide any kind of financial assistance. Before then, a woman could have lobbied for the father to help, but now they were on their own, hence the rise of baby farms. The rise of these places, the growth of these places, also caused, I suppose, the birth of the NSPCC, which formed its London branch in 1884, and one of its responsibilities was to police the baby farmers, as many, in fact most, were illegal. Dyer wasn't the only one who came to a specific type of end, shall we say? Sorry, have I wrecked the story for you by giving away the ending? Well, if you hadn't worked out that she had an appointment eventually at Newgate with the rope, then you're far too nice and far too sheltered. But 6 baby farmers were hanged in England, and 1 each in Scotland and Wales over the 40-year period from 1870 to 1909. Margaret Waters, who was 35, Annie Took, who was 40, Jessie King, who was 27, obviously Amelia Dyer, she was 57 at the time of her death, Ada Shard Williams, 24, Annie Walters, 54, and Amelia Sack, 29, and Rhoda Willis. Yes, spoiler alert, exactly. Rhoda Willis of 44, who was actually hanged by Henry and Thomas Pierpoint. In fact, so was Annie Walters and Amelia Sack, the famous Pierpoint. Sadly, as well, when child mortality was as high as 20% of children not making it to their 5th birthday, the discovery of a dead child was actually rarely investigated. And as they didn't have the advantage of DNA testing back then, the mother would never be found. But back to Amelia. Well, she's decided now to start baby farming on her own. She sees it as quite a lucrative little market to get into. She moved around a lot, Bristol, Reading, different parts of London, and she changed her name as well. She used Thomas, which would have been her first married name, Dyer, her second married name, and Harding, to name but 3. She was known to have resided in Reading and Caversham, and they believe when she was actually finally apprehended, she was planning to move to Somerset. And is this moving around is the reason that no one knows exactly how many poor unfortunate mites she murdered. Amazingly, and this seems to happen with killers, that someone stumbles across them. It's happened with most famous serial killers. They have been caught, but just not for the crimes that they've actually, the main crime, if you like, that they've been perpetrating. But in 1879, a doctor was starting to get concerned with the amount of infant deaths occurring around wherever Dyer was living at that time, and went to investigate. But instead of manslaughter, or even murder, she ended up doing 6 months hard labour for basic mistreatment. She even managed to convince authorities at times that she was insane. If you read the accounts in depth, which I won't put you through because, you know, they do leave a very sick taste in your mouth, if I'm honest. The stays in the asylums that she had were, shall we say, did seem to coincide with when someone was about to discover the thing she was doing. And I don't think she was mad. Well, I suppose that's up for debate, but she wasn't mad enough to be classed as insane. But who better than to act mad than a former nurse who worked in asylums and also nursed her poor mother through her last moments in mental torment? It was actually a little girl called Helena Fry who was to finally help the police stop Dyer. One of the sort of culmination of events, I suppose you could say. This little girl, they believe, was around 12 months old, and her lifeless body was fished out of the Thames by a bargeman. Interestingly, this bargeman said he'd seen a frumpy, sort of largish, chunky, stocky woman walk along to the lock gate, throw something in, and then walk back without the same parcel. And he decided, when the parcel hadn't sunk, he was going to retrieve it, fishing it out of the Thames. The police were actually able to decipher an address on the brown paper that had been used to wrap her, and this led them to Dyer. Well, Dyer, of course, maintained her innocence, said it wasn't her, said somebody had stolen the paper out of her rubbish, and all that kind of thing, but I don't think the police were really believing her by then. Previously, before she went into her modus operandi of killings, she'd been using an opium syrup that was quite common back then, called Godfrey's Cordial, also known as Mother's Friend, which was meant to calm a child down and also had a habit of quelling their appetite, so that subsequently they died from malnutrition, which, sadly, wasn't uncommon then. There was an awful lot of children who were, the cause of death was seen to be malnutrition, insufficient mother's milk, that kind of thing. But she switched to using white dressmaker's tape, tying it around the poor child baby's neck, ensuring a slow and terrifying death for the child. In fact, and this is one of the many reasons that I dislike this woman with a passion, she almost seemed proud of her trademark, announcing to the police that the tape was how you could tell it was one of mine. Anyone who thinks it's funny or whatever, hang up now, because someone who's proud of the fact that that was how she killed and that was how they could tell it was hers, not really the kind of person I'd want to be involved with, eh? But she wasn't hung at Newgate in June 1896 for poor Helena, though. And not even for Harry Simmons, only 13 months old, who was actually found in the same holdall as the child who she was finally arrested for. It was for the murder of a little 4-month-old Doris Marmon. She was the only killing that Dyer pled guilty to. The only one. I guess it didn't matter how many she said she had or hadn't killed. She was being hung, whether it was 1 or 100, and 1 and 101, I suppose. But for all of these reasons, I despise the woman. She took advantage of mothers who had nowhere to turn. Had her daughter Mary Ann, also known as Polly, help her with her business. In fact, there's rumours that Polly carried on the business after her mum was hung. She tried to claim insanity so as not to swing on the noose. She made money from these poor little children's belongings. When she was arrested, stacks of pawn slips were found. And she also made money from the child themselves, being paid to take them to, as far as a mum would be concerned, that she was going to look at them, and then getting rid of them. And according to her, one of the reasons she used the tape, and this is a quote, "I used to like to watch them with the tape around their neck, but it's soon all over with them." Ugh! How can you feel anything but utter hatred for someone like that? As I said, when I believe I spoke to her on the spirit box, I was neutral, and I did just ask her questions. But I really do hope that wherever she is not resting in peace. And on that colourful note, let's have a 30-second break, and then it's the lovely Mr. Howley. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
And we're back, and we're joined by the lovely Chris Howley. Now, you may know Chris from his role in a company called Team Impact. You may know Chris from his role as the, I suppose, manager, for want of a better word, of Woodchester Mansion. Or you may know Chris from appearing on the television programme on Really Ghost Chasers, along with Ian Lawman, Paul Hobday, and Kai Nambiar, the lovely Kai Nambiar. So whichever way you know him from, you'll probably know Chris from somewhere. So, hi Chris, how's it going?
Hi, Peggy. Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Is manager of Woodchester Mansion the correct term, or booking agent?
Manager, I suppose. Bookings manager.
Right.
Yes.
But you've done that a while, haven't you? You've looked after Woodchester for quite a while?
Yeah, 2006 I started the role.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I've been investigating it for 3 years up until that point, and they said you might as well look after the paranormal for us. So I took the role on for them with pleasure.
Do you ever sneak in there when nobody's there with your keys?
No, we're not allowed. I've got to book in if we want to go down.
Oh, that's no fun.
Health and safety and all that. People knowing who's in the building and who's not in the building. So yeah, we've got to be careful.
Oh,
It's grade
that's a
1
shame.
listed property. So no, we're not allowed.
Because wouldn't it just? When I was talking to someone about it, I said I'd like to investigate the lakes, like go down there, but you can't apparently. Is it right? You
No,
can't
that's-
investigate the land?
Well, the land's National Trust owned, so it's
Right.
not owned by the mansion. But they've got some rule that you're not allowed on National Trust ground after dark. So up until dark, yes, you can do what you like, but after dark, you're not supposed to be there.
Oh, they're spoiled sports, aren't they?
I know. I suppose you could sneak in.
But you didn't say that. You didn't say that, did you?
That was my inner demon coming out.
We'll edit that bit out. So, I mean, as I said, you've got quite a good CV of things that you do to do with the paranormal and things you're involved in, Chris. How long have you been investigating the paranormal? How did it start?
Well, it was 2003. I think most people my age were gripped by the first series of Most Haunted.
Mm-hmm.
And so back in 2002, I think that first started broadcasting.
Right.
And 2003, my brother spotted that Jason Carl was hosting an event at Bewley Abbey. So I think about 8 of us had booked on, took the
Right.
trip down to Bewley, did the investigation, and we were hooked. And so we formed our own group, and Woodchester Mansion being our local haunted house, started investigating the building on a regular basis. And that's what kick-started it.
Okay. So I presume there weren't many groups around at that point then, back at the beginning of 2000 to 2002,
No.
2003.
Very few. I mean, the only commercial group I knew of was Fright Nights. I mean, they were established in 1999. I think they were the first commercial ghost hunting group.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's only, 3 years later, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
but paranormal groups, few and far between.
So is that how Team Impact was formed?
Team Impact, no, that came out, I think roughly around 2007, 2008 with the live show that took over from Most Haunted. You know, Most Haunted went off the screen for a while, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were notorious for having the live ghost hunt every Halloween.
Yeah.
So what they replaced it with was a program called Paranormal Live,
Right.
where they pitched 2 teams against each other. Team Impact was one of those teams. It was Paul Hobday, Anthony Hughes, and 2 girls, Ola and I can't remember the name of the other one. But that was the first involvement of Team Impact. So they kept together as a group for a couple of years after. But Paul and Tony were also at that time hosts for Haunted Happenings, an event company.
Oh, right. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I met them when they used to come down as hosts with Haunted Happenings at Woodchester Mansion, and became friends, discovered they were local guys. And in 2010, we met in a pub one afternoon and decided to take Team Impact to the next level. So that's how Team Impact, as you know it today, formed from a meeting in a haunted pub in Gloucester.
Oh, there you go. So where did Ian? How did Ian Lawman? Was he part of Team Impact, or did he come in more when Ghost Chasers came
Yeah,
about?
Ian's come in basically from Ghost Chasers. I've known Ian for many years. I used to have him down at the mansion as a guest quite regularly, so I've
Right.
been friends with Ian for quite a long time anyway. Um, so it was quite nice to eventually work with him on a show. 'Cause we
Mm.
used to talk about it quite a bit. Because when I met him first, when he just finished filming series one of Living with the Dead,
Mhm.
we were always chatting about doing something together in the future. It
Mm.
took a few years, but we finally got there.
Yeah. So how did Ghost Chasers come about as a show?
It was basically a Dutch company wanted to trial a paranormal show because it's not something that's generally done in Europe. Well, not Northern Europe anyway.
Mm.
So they contacted Bright Spark, London TV production company, who then went straight to Richard Wolff, who was known as he is known as Mr. Paranormal in the industry, as
Mm.
he's the chap who devised Most Haunted.
Right.
And Richard basically got on the phone, knew he wanted Ian. He'd worked with Ian on Famous and Frightened
Mhm.
and Living with the Dead, so he knew he had his medium. Contacted Paul Hobday.
Mhm.
He'd been looking through different teams and he'd come across the Team Impact webpage and called us in for a casting rehearsal. Kai had
Mm.
already been picked by the channel. They said
Mhm.
that was the only proviso. They've got a vacancy. They've got the host of the show,
Yeah.
um, because they needed to use him as part of a project he'd done for them. So
Right.
it was basically a team of three that he needed. So
Yeah.
all came about very, very quickly. It was a phone call in uh, basically late October. We go in for a meeting in December and we started filming in January. That's how quick it happened.
Right. And who chose the venues that you went to as part of Ghost Chasers? Was it a kind of the production team said these are where we want you to go, or did you guys have an input?
We had a lot of input actually, but I've got to say it was the lovely Jenny Crane, our location researcher,
Mhm.
and she was always on the phone to me and Paul. Look what I found, guys. What do you think of this? And we'd either say yes or well, not really. Has it got any ghost history? Has there ever been any sightings? Well, no, but look at it. This would be amazing. Well,
Mm.
might look amazing, but if there's no reported paranormal activity, why are we there?
Yeah.
We need a backstory. But she was brilliant. I mean, the locations she got for us were fantastic. She did
Mm.
a great job.
Mm. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, one of the things about Ian, I do love Ian Lawman. I love the way he comes across, the bad boy of British
Yeah,
sidekicks and all that kind of thing. But
yes,
one of the things I think people might be surprised about is that Ian does actually have a sense of humour. And you
yes, he
guys have
does.
played some tricks on him. And one of them was actually in
Yes,
Hastings, I believe, at a hotel you guys were staying in before
it
you
was.
filmed the episode of Ghost Chasers that we're going to be focusing on tonight in the True Crimes Museum. What did you do to poor Mr. Lawman at the
Well, we don't
hotel?
quite. Ian was travelling with Kai that day. We'd finished we finished in Cheltenham and we were travelling south and I was in the car with Paul. And we said, look, we got to try and get Ian because we'd heard that he was a bit of a prankster, so we thought we'd try and get him first.
Mhm.
So myself and Paul arrived at the hotel before Ian and Kai,
Mhm.
and we bribed the receptionist to say when Ian Lawman comes in, we showed her a picture of him. Can you just wind him up and say, "Oh, really pleased that you're staying in our hotel, Derek." So she got her to basically call him Derek Okora. It was, but the way she did it was brilliant. Oh, really pleased. I've seen you on TV, haven't I? You're the medium guy, and yeah, oh, brilliant. You're staying in the hotel, and she said, right, so, yeah, Derek Core, isn't it? And then she grabbed the paperwork. He went, no, no, it's Ian Norman. He did tweet quite quickly. He looked round. He said, "Where are they?" And we did catch it all on camera as well. We had a
Oh,
couple of
brilliant.
cameras in the room, so we got him.
So no ego there, shall we say? There was no sort of
No,
tantrums
not
that
at all.
somebody had mistaken him for Derek Okora.
None at all. He's
Although
no,
if anyone
he
doesn't
says
know,
it.
if anyone doesn't know what Ian looks like, have a look at Ian and then have a look at Derek Acora, and you will see why this is actually incredibly funny that someone will mistake the tattoo-covered, black nail varnished bad boy, who's quite a bit younger, I would say, than Acora, for Derek Acora.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I know.
No, I was reading that actually. I think it was on Paul's page. I was reading about that one, which it did have me. With the fact still got a cough at the moment. I was coughing and laughing all at the same time because that was quite that did tickle me. That one playing a trick like that.
Ian did get me back big time in Chateau St Anne. He hid round the corner and I jumped out my skin as he just jumped out on me. So yeah, it was like that all the way round.
It's
in
a shame
between
you haven't got footage of all of these. You could do an outtake because I sometimes find the outtakes on these kind of shows better. Like when you see the outtakes on things like Ghost Asylum, Ghost Adventures, all those kind of things. I actually prefer those sometimes to the actual show because it shows the people presenting and investigating. Excuse me, they're real people. You know, sometimes you see that whole sort of facade for television. I like seeing
that scene is actually on my blog because I was actually walking around doing my own just walkthrough of the castle just for my own records, and so the camera shot ends up with Ian on his back laughing his head off because he just made me jump.
Is that where you screamed? Is that where you screamed on that one? Because wasn't it in Europe that you screamed?
Oh, that was in the Muir tunnels. Yes, that was all four of us running out of those tunnels. We did go back after we calmed ourselves down, but yeah, that was probably.
So what's the address for your blog, Chris?
It's just chrishowley.com. If you go on there, you'll see there's a separate blog page, or you can go directly to the Ghost Chasers blogs, which are on the Ghost Chasers tag on the website.
Okay, because I believe you told me there's also a video of Kai in just his pants on there as well.
Yes, yeah, episode 9 blog, if anyone wants to see Kai in his underpants.
There's a few of us who might. We'll admit it.
Yeah.
And also
I can see my hit counter going up.
Say what?
I can see the hit counter going up as I talk to you. Everybody jumping
I'm
on that blog.
I'm just trying to direct a traffic to your page, Chris. Come on, I'm just trying to help you here.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
I also want to see Ian Lawman like a dying beetle laughing on the floor. That's also quite a funny thing. I love seeing people do that when they fall. I was at Kelvedon Hatch, the secret nuclear bunker, a few months ago. And a few people who were there, I didn't find it that scary there. I found it actually quite a calm place, believe it or not. But somebody didn't realise there was a doorway that led back into the room we were in, and she's gone down this really narrow corridor, thinking that this doorway was to a cupboard. Next thing we're trying to, me and a couple of friends are conducting a spirit box session to try and because we're getting some weird things coming through, and we're like 3 stories underground. And next thing we know, we see this scream and someone literally clawing back. They'd fallen on the floor and they're clawing back like on their hands and, bum in fear because the door had opened because they didn't realise it was a doorway from another room. And you just heard this scream and then someone shuffling backwards really fast and then someone coming the other way, bending over double. They were laughing so hard. And
oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah, and another one was someone went into a room on their own because they thought they heard a voice, and we were all standing there. Suddenly you hear this scream and like shouting, "Oh shit!" as they come running out. I was like, "What the hell happened?" I just saw my reflection.
Yeah, it happens, doesn't it? They're great moments when you're out doing paranormal investigation.
Oh dear. I just love it. I love it. I love the laughter. I think some people take it too seriously and don't realise that laughter is actually the best way to get the energy levels up.
You generally get a lot more activity after something like that's happened anyway.
It's the Monsters Inc. theory.
It is.
I tell everyone this. It's the Monsters Inc. theory. Laughter produces more energy than fear.
Yes.
Yes, it's but some of those sort of things when people have fallen over and not realise that and the door opens and they think they've just encountered the best supernatural paranormal experience ever. I love it. I love it. So, So Ghost Chasers, we mentioned your blog, and if anyone wants to see Ian Lawman falling over laughing so hard, or they want to see Kai in his pants, they just go to the blog. Paul's is a similar address, I think, isn't it? And he's the one who had the video of you guys pranking Ian.
PaulHobday.com.
Yeah.
He's got that one.
Yeah, of you pranking Ian in Hastings. Yes. But the True Crimes Museum is what we're going to be chatting about. Now, if you haven't seen the episode, fret ye not, you can still get hold of it on demand. I believe. It was on Really, Ghost Chasers.
It is.
Episode 2 is Hastings, I think, isn't it? Is it episode 2?
It is, yes.
And it covers a couple of places in Hastings, and one of the focuses on it is the Aleister Crowley link to Hastings. Now, I've been to the True Crimes Museum. I've done an investigation there. It was quite a hard place to investigate because there's a pub next door, and they had music going till about 2 o'clock in the morning. They had a party going, so a lot of our EVPs and everything, we couldn't get clean recordings because the noise was permeating through the walls. But we did get some interesting experiences there, and so did you guys, judging by the television show.
Yeah, I mean, we were quite lucky because we actually took over the pub as our base room.
Okay.
So we didn't have that interference from the public. The owners agreed that we could use that as a base and kit room.
Right.
They had decorating going on as well. So I think they were sort of midway through a refurb. So it was quite a good time that we were there. So we didn't get any noise pollution, which was good.
Yeah. So
it's quite a strange location. A lot smaller than I thought it was going to be.
It is, isn't it? It's quite claustrophobic inside, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, because you're told it's built into these tunnels, but when you actually get in them, it's like you say, it is very claustrophobic, quite small and tight. So, but yeah, interesting location nonetheless.
So one of the first rooms that you showed when you were doing your show was, I call it the death room, the murder room, whatever you want to call it. It's the one that's got the lethal injection bed. I think it's from Indonesia or something like that. There, it's got a noose. It's got the bath that a hitman, whose name escapes me right now, is meant to have dismembered and got rid of some of the bodies of people he hit.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either. This is 2 years ago we were filming.
Yeah, I think it was the bath itself was from East London somewhere, Beckton or something like that off the top of my head. It was that sort of area. But then you've also got the skull of a rapist and murderer called Louis Lefebvre. And that was one of the ones that you guys seemed to pick up on, or Ian especially, picked up on some stuff. Because there's quite a lot of like urban legends about this skull, isn't there?
Well, there is. I mean, myself and Paul, we used to try and get as much research in for ourselves as the investigators when we got to the location. So we try and find the owners and try and get as much background info, just so we knew where to set our kit up, what to lock cameras off on, just in case anything was going to happen. Yeah. And one of the most interesting stories that myself and Paul were told was two nurses two sisters two sisters had gone to the museum on a day trip, and they were the only ones in the building, so they paid their money. He said, take as long as you like, and he said they'd been in less than 5 minutes and they both come running out quite shaken. He said, what's the matter with you? And they said, we've been in the room with the skull and it's just moved.
Yeah.
And it freaked them out. They said, we're just going to leave. And he offered them a refund, but they just left. So that's just one of the stories that he's had of this skull moving. So that was one of the areas that I decided I was going to put a camera on time lapse and just take photos all night while we were there. But unfortunately, it didn't move for me.
Right. Huh. And I know, did Ian pick anything up off the skull that wasn't in the show, perhaps, or did that it not really, for want of a better term, communicate with him? Ian?
No, Ian was picking up that it was a decapitation, but not. I don't know if this say it as a like picking up on ghost energy rather than the spirit energy.
Yeah.
So nothing. I don't think there was anything actually there to do with the skull that Ian could directly communicate with to get good solid evidence or information from for me and Paul to investigate.
Right.
But it's very interesting stories from the place.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we didn't manage to capture anything conclusive from that skull at all. So it was left out. And nothing really to show, so we had to move on.
Okay. Now, one of the interesting things I thought was that was the exhibit that turned itself on.
Yeah, that was interesting because everything had been turned off, and we were assured by the owner that
Mm.
everything was turned off. We did go and check after that segment of the investigation because that that's the only logical explanation. If an
Yeah.
exhibit goes on, then you naturally assume it's still plugged in or there's some power source to it.
Yeah.
So myself and Paul did go find the owner there and get him to check, and he assured us no, nothing's on. So why it turned on and seemingly turned itself off on
Yeah.
command as well.
Yeah,
That was
that was the
really
weird thing
interesting.
watching the episode. It did seem to do it. There was a
Yeah,
bit of a delay, but it was on, as you say, on command. I think it wasn't it the spirit that Ian picked up on called Lucinda or something. Who,
Lucinda.
yeah,
Yes, this was the name he was picking up on. We don't know who Lucinda was,
yeah,
but it was a name he was calling out to, and um, it she did seem to respond and turn the machine back off.
yeah.
So I don't know. I've only
Ah,
ever experienced that in one other location. That was Shreve's Barn up in Stratford-on-Avon.
right,
There's a museum up there called Shreve's Barn.
right.
But, similar sort of place to the Crime Through Time. We had an exhibit turn itself on up there, and
Ah,
the owner actually took me around the back and showed me the exhibit was unplugged.
wow. Okay.
Don't know. These things do happen.
They do. They do. That's why we investigate them, Chris. That's why we look.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's why we keep doing this and get
I know.
sleep deprived and people
Yes.
thinking we're nuts. Yeah.
If I'm tripping over my words, I apologise because I've actually been up I haven't had any sleep now for the last 2 nights because I've been down with just a mansion both nights
Oh.
looking after groups. So I've got plenty of coffee here keeping
And
me
you've been at
going.
work all day today, haven't you?
I have, yes. I conduct brass bands as well. So I've
Wow.
been working with brass bands all day today. But
Wow.
I'm back now talking about what I love the most.
Oh, I love my music too. I'm not so much brass bands. I'm more rock music, but I do love my music, so I get that. Um, Something else that I thought was it was a very. I mean, we were talking off air about how Paul is very much the cynic. He's the very hard to get him to accept that something is inexplicable, isn't he? Would
Yeah,
be a sort of way of putting it, which you need on every team. You do need,
yeah.
um, as Emily Fafaro Kirkpatrick of Three Girls in the Dark called it, every team needs the arsehole. Every team needs the person who disappoints the person who thinks they've found
Oh,
something.
yeah,
That's
no,
that.
Paul's a lovely guy.
Yeah, no, we don't
But
mean
he,
arsehole as in they are arseholes, but the arsehole
yeah,
that you know what it's
know
like
what
when
you
you
mean.
think you've discovered
I know.
something paranormal, you think you've made the biggest hit ever, and they turn around and say, "No, that door was left open. That's why that
Yeah.
draft came for you." You're just like, "Oh, you're such an arsehole,"
Oh,
you know
yeah, what
that
did you point that
person.
out for? Why did you find that?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
you
know.
love them to
No,
pieces.
Paul's
You love
brilliant.
them to pieces. You do anything for
Yeah,
them, but oh God, when they debunk your most amazing find, they are
yeah,
the arsehole of the team. And all teams need them. And to be fair, I'm normally the arsehole on my teams because I'm the one that will look into every single possibility before I agree something is paranormal. So you
yeah.
need them.
Paul is meticulous with detail. I mean, he's
Yes.
a health and safety consultant, and he's
He
that
doesn't deserve to
comes
live then.
across.
If he's health and safety, he does not. I hate those people.
But I mean that attention to detail that he has to do with his job. I mean, it carries over into his skeptic role,
Yeah,
and he's like that with every location. He seems to know where all the cracks are in the building. It's
yeah.
like he's analysed the place before we got there and done a full risk assessment.
He probably
So
has.
so he knows where all the drafts are going to come from before we even get there. But he's brilliant, and it does make the investigation a lot more authentic for us because we're not just chasing after noises caught by creaking floorboards or
Yeah.
drafts.
No, I agree. You do. You
So,
do. I mean, I'm
yeah,
joking about someone being the
I
arsehole of the
know.
team, but you do need them. You do need that person. I don't mean
You do.
someone who
Yeah,
is so scared they won't even entertain the possibility that it's a potential for. There's a few people in the industry who seem to be so anti paranormal. I wonder why they were in the industry in the first place. But
yeah.
no, I mean
Well,
someone who
you've got
looks.
cynics, haven't you? You've got cynics who won't believe, and you've got skeptics who are open to the fact, but they are more questioning of it, which
Yeah,
is good. They keep everything grounded.
yeah. But no, I'm talking. There's a few people I know in the industry who keep saying no. There's nothing. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as spirits. There's no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing as paranormal activity. And it's like, well, why do you continue investigating them? Why do you continue being part of all these
Yeah,
groups if you're going to slate every single experience that someone has.
Exactly.
They're the people I can't be dealing with. There's slating and there's questioning. They're two different things.
Yeah.
And I can't even remember where I was going. Oh, I know what it was. It was Ian. You were coming in through, I think, one of the corridors, and Ian was saying he felt very disorientated and he felt very dizzy. Paul held the, I think it was the K2 or something, Mega McGall's reader, to the light.
No, I know what you. Yeah, I was I was doing the monitoring with the with the Trifield meter,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the displays was, it must have been really high voltage. I mean, the milligauss was off the scale. So I pointed that out, and Paul instantly jumped on that and said, "That's why you're feeling dizzy, because of the energy." And he said, "No, because of the amount of energy being kicked out, that's what the spirits are using." So he instantly turned that round back on Paul. I think he did quite a good job of doing that. So you left, which is great for TV, because you've got an audience out there.
You got a bare knuckle boxer arguing with a cynic.
But I mean, I think that segment would appease both audiences. You've got Ian saying no, the spirits are using that energy, and you've got Ian saying no, that energy is giving you a headache, making you think there are spirits.
Yeah.
Who's right? So
I'm not sure out of the two of them who I'd put my money on.
But
it could be Ian.
Well, in a bare knuckle fight, it would have to be Ian, wouldn't it?
Although Paul's quite tall, so
yes, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think Ian's faster though.
Is he? Well, isn't Ian an ex-dancer as well or something?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so he could.
I think Ian would be light on his feet.
Yeah. It'd be an interesting thing to record, though, wouldn't it? Anyway, so there was that I thought was quite interesting, and the questioning that went into it, and all of that. And it's something actually I don't think we always think of that it could be electrical conduct that's affecting the way our mind is working and all that. It doesn't necessarily have to be the paranormal.
Yes.
One of the experiences I had at the True Crimes I was telling you about before we went on air was that the serial killer Amelia Dyer came through on a spirit box, but she didn't come through to you guys, did she?
She didn't. No. In fact, I completely missed her exhibit. The bodice you said.
Yeah,
you were
bodice, and it's
by?
got like her picture, that horrible picture of her behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, we didn't get any contact there at all. Not from her.
Maybe she only comes through to mums or women, because that was her modus operandi.
Yeah. I mean, she was a very strange woman, wasn't she?
Yes, you could say that. She when she was finally arrested, and she was only hung for the murder, I think, of one child, even though she's meant to have killed. Well, the spirit box that came through laughed and said she'd killed hundreds when I asked her how many she'd killed. She maintained it was insanity was the reason, because her mum did actually go insane from, I can't remember what it was. It was one of the illnesses that was quite rife back in the 1840s, and her mum died from insanity from that. But she maintained that she was insane as well, but the courts sort of said, no, you're not. You know exactly what you're doing. But yes, she came through on a spirit box, told us her name, told us that how she'd killed the children, laughed and said hundreds. And it was a very interactive session as well on the spirit box. She was answering my questions, and not there wasn't any sort of it was like audio pareidolia going on, because everyone was hearing the answers. There was about 9 of us in the death room when we were talking to her. So that was quite a sort of, especially for a mum as well, to hear someone who killed children to make money, hundreds of children to make money. That was quite an emotional sort of, I would have probably killed her all over again had I got the chance to, sort of thing. So that was it's interesting that different spirits come through to different people. You don't always get the same spirit every single time.
Well, you can get that in a location like we were talking about earlier, where we've got one person picking up on a spirit, another picking up on another spirit. The two might be linked together, but you're both picking up on different spirits. Yeah, this is quite interesting, isn't it?
And you were saying that when it was there were certain areas that you decided to use the voice generator in the museum. What sort of things did that give you? Any more insight into what was going on, who was there, or who to be careful of?
Well, the voice generator we were using above the museum, because the tunnels where the True Crime Museum sits are linked to the Palace Court Hotel, which is above. So, although it looked like two different locations, we class that as one investigation because of the connection of Aleister Crowley apparently being linked to the tunnels where the True Crime Museum are based, where Aleister Crowley did some of his devil worshipping. When we got upstairs, to start off with, it was quite quiet activity-wise. So, but you're there to make a TV show. I mean, you don't want to see four blokes just calling out in the dark with bemused looks on their faces with nothing going on. So if it's quiet, what we'll then do is pull out a voice app, and I think that the one segment you do see is myself and Kai being locked in the safe room.
That actually scared me.
With a voice app.
I'm claustrophobic as well.
Yeah,
Poor Kai is.
Kai is, yeah. He really was freaking out. He didn't like it at all.
But it was the app was going Kai. Was it genuinely doing that? It was repeated. That hasn't been fabricated for television.
No, the voice app was just repeating his name. I don't know whether the app was glitching, but that's what happened.
And the door shut as well. You couldn't get the door open.
To that was the app was actually just repeating Kai's name over it because it got stuck on a loop, and ended up just turning it off.
Yeah, but the door got stuck as well, didn't it? You didn't have Kai.
They did stick. We couldn't open it from the inside. It took Paul and Ian, I think, who were the other side of the door, who opened it up for us.
Well, I think the footage, Kai's kicking it at the same time that they're trying to pull it.
Yes, yeah. Whether it was there or not, I don't know. It was. It did seem to be quite tight anyway, but it was. I mean, I had to go on the door myself. I couldn't open it.
You wouldn't have got me in there. You wouldn't have got me in there, Chris. I'll do anything for my science, for my investigations, but I draw the line. And I'm not actually, I was telling you off air with my husband and I watching Haunted Australia's Arradale episode.
Yes.
And Ian was trying to convince one of the investigators to get into the mortuary drawers to see what happened, and one of them just couldn't do it. And my husband said, I wouldn't do that. And I said, no, neither would I. And he went, you're not scared of the ghosts. And I said, it's not the ghosts that freak me out. It's the fact that someone would leave me in there and forget, or they wouldn't be able to get the door open. And I wouldn't be able to turn round to kick because I'd be head first towards the door. It's not the spirits that might be in there that would freak me. It's the enclosed space. And I couldn't have done it. I don't know how Kai did it, to be honest. If it's claustrophobic, I take my hat off to him for that.
And then he didn't like it.
No, I bet he didn't. And then for the door to get stuck.
He nearly quit the show on this episode when we were
Really?
filming this episode. Yeah, he really did get freaked out because he also saw a shadow go into a room.
Yes, I was going to mention that next when we were talking about the hotel, because the hotel itself it's literally just above the True Crime Museum, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the cellars of the hotel are right behind the tunnels, so there is a link there somewhere. You'd only have to bash through a few bricks and you'd be in the True Crime Museum again.
Yeah.
So they are linked.
And there's 2 room 308s.
Yes, that's what confused us because we didn't notice that until Kai had seen the shadow.
Mm. So what happened? What happened to him? I mean, I've seen the programme, so... But...
Yeah, well, we decided to split up at this point. Myself and Paul went off to the opposite end of the hotel to see if we could get any activity over there, and Ian and Kai were down by room 308, but one of the room 308s. And Kai had gone after... He saw this shadow in the corridor enter the room. And that Ian called me and Kai, you better come down here. Guys, because Kai's just picked up somebody in this room. And we then noticed, well, hang on a minute, there's 2 308s. So it's quite interesting because Ian had been picking up on the characters down there. But then to find out there were two rooms with the same number, that was quite bizarre.
And did you look into that at all? Did you look into it with the owners, or why there were 2 308s? Were they able to explain it?
He couldn't explain why there were 2 308s, but this is what I've always got to defend myself with this particular episode, because there is a segment where you see me kicking a door quite forcefully, which looks like criminal damage. It wasn't. It was an area we asked the owner if we could get into, and he said, we're currently renovating the whole site. He said, if you can break the door down, kick it off its hinges, you'd be doing me a favour. So,
Well, my
so
husband
that,
said he just watched it. When he watched it, he went, "I ain't going to kick that down." I said, "Why?" He said, "The hinges are going the wrong way." And I said, "Well, you might
yeah, I
break the
know.
wood."
That's right. Yeah, he said, try and break it off. He said, it is. You're right. It's locked from the other side. I've got to get in there at some point. But if you can kick it down, you'll be doing me a favour. But obviously, there's no disclaimer on the screen to say Chris
No,
has had permission from the
I was
owner
a
to
bit
do
shocked.
this.
I was
I
going to
know.
ask you if you're having a bad day or something, and you just decided to take it out on that poor door.
No, I did blog about that just to say, look, I'm no criminal. This we had permission. It was. I'd have probably charged him for demolition if I'd have managed to get through after all that effort.
Well, couldn't the bare knuckle boxer use some of his dancing techniques to sort of kick through it?
He was on his sensitive side at that moment.
Oh, was he? Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah.
I was saying my husband's a builder and he was watching that, and I was quite shocked because I was like, "Oh, they must have got permission to do that," because you wouldn't normally get investigators,
Yeah.
well, not decent investigators anyway. I know it does happen,
Yeah.
going
No,
in and
big
starting to
ask.
try and damage a property, because that's like the whole antithesis of what we're about. And
Yeah.
and he just looked at it and he sort of went up to the television. He goes, "Well, he ain't going to kick that door down anyway." And he said, the hinges go the wrong way. He said, "You'd need 2 or 3 people kicking like that to kick it down." I was like, "Oh,
I
bless,
know.
leave him alone. I'll tell him when I
The
speak
owner
to
was
him,
a
but leave him
lovely guy,
alone."
actually. Yeah, he was a lovely guy. We just went up. Mario, his name was, his foreign chap, and said, "Oh, can you come down and show us how we can get into this room?" He said, "Oh, kick the door down." He said, "Do me a favor." So, are you sure? Yeah, kick the door down. So that's how that segment came about. So
Okay,
we thought, well,
okay.
it'll make dramatic television even if we can't get through. But
Chris
I
has
did
had
get
a
a lot
bad
of flack.
day.
I know, I did get a lot of flack for that, so I regretted it. But there you go. I've explained
Maybe,
it
maybe if it
every
happens again,
opportunity.
yeah, maybe if it
I
happens again,
know.
get them to put the disclaimer up on the screen saying we have had
I
permission
know.
to demolish this building. Um,
But I mean, with that shadow with Kai upstairs, I digressed a bit there. But with the rooms 308s, Kai, after already having claustrophobia, seeing the shadow, bearing in mind he'd never been on a ghost hunt. I mean, this series was his first ever
mm,
experience of paranormal investigation.
mm,
He was really starting to get freaked out, and
mm,
he did go to the director and say, "Look, I can't do this.
mm,
It's really freaking me out." So we did go back to the hotel, get a few beers in, sit down with Kai and just tell him how it was. Say, look,
mm,
you're safe. Yes, things happen. It won't be like this in every location.
mm.
It might be worse. We didn't tell him that. um, we said you're completely safe, and we talked him round. And I think at the end of it, he was glad he did stay because the whole series is as much about Kai's
Journey,
transition
yeah.
from a complete non-believer
Mm,
into and somebody completely frightened of
mm,
the dark into the later episodes. You do see him chasing after shadows on his
mm.
own, which is absolutely fantastic.
When I spoke to him I did message him on Instagram actually. I didn't expect him to reply back, but he did. And he said that he'd call himself a skeptical believer now. He said, "I don't believe in everything." He said, "But I believe there's a
That's right.
possibility." And I said to him, "But that's how it should be. That's how I am, and I've
Yes,
been doing this for years."
that's
Um,
right.
so you know when someone has, yeah, if you say he's going chasing after the noises and chasing after the things rather than running away from them, yeah, we'll make him an investigator yet. We'll make an
Yeah.
investigator of him.
Yes. Yeah. I think he loves it now. We've turned him completely.
Good, good. You could start a school, couldn't you? How to turn the cynics into the non-believers. I must admit, my sounds a bit arrogant saying my personal trainer, he was laughing at me that I do all of this, and I said, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "Don't you believe in it?" And he went, "No." I said, "Well, not at all." And he went, "Well," he said, "I don't want to believe in it. I refuse to allow myself to believe it's possible." I said, "Why is that then?" He says, "Because if I believe it's possible, what else is possible?"
Yeah.
And he says, "So I've shut myself up. I will not believe in it. I'm working on it. I'm working on it." But I thought that's actually pretty how some people are. They don't want it to be real because then what else is out there?
Yes.
What option? What is there? So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, Kai. But didn't you? I mean, I know that you set up that. It wasn't a séance, was it? In the hotel, it was.
Oh, the Aleister Crowley circle.
Yeah, yeah, that and
Yes.
Ian was not happy about that, was he?
He wasn't. Ian had got hold of Ian had got hold of an Aleister Crowley tarot deck.
Right.
So me and Paul came up with the idea and said, well, why don't we use the tarot deck and do a séance in a circle.
Yeah.
So while they were having the evening meal, me and Paul went up to the room and put out the Aleister Crowley circle from one of his designs, complete with
Right.
candles and the whole tarot deck.
Yeah.
We thought it looked quite good actually,
I thought
but
it looked quite
yeah,
impressive. Yeah, when I was looking at it on the television, it looked quite moody, quite sort of
yeah,
satanic. Yeah.
yeah. Ian wasn't happy. He thought it was a little bit too dangerous from his perspective.
And was
Um,
it?
no, nothing happened. So, unfortunately, I mean,
Hmm.
myself and Paul. We're both of the opinion, bring it on.
Hmm.
We don't do protection or anything like that. If it happens, it happens. We're with Ian. If anything went wrong,
Hmm.
I trust Ian completely. He'd be able to sort us out.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, we just went for it. But unfortunately, nobody was there to play that night, so we didn't
Hmm.
communicate with Aleister Crowley.
I do think that Ian does seem to. I don't know whether it's the way that the shows are edited, but he does seem to worry about the evil stuff quite a lot. He does seem
He
to focus
does.
on evil quite a lot, and I'm kind of the opinion that most spirits aren't evil. Most of them mischievous, yes. Attention
Yes.
seeking, yes. But
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that but he does seem to focus on all the things I've ever seen him do on the evil side of things. Would that be a
I
right,
mean,
correct, some sort of observation?
I think with Ian, he did he. I can't give you the details, but I know there was one particular case that he was working on, which was very, very dark,
Mm,
and it did. I think that Ian's very aware of what can happen.
right.
So if with Aleister Crowley, I mean, you're dealing with a dark, well, an alleged dark person,
Mm,
aren't you?
mm,
Somebody in the dark arts and going down that route when you're calling out and trying to summon the devil. And so I think whenever we got to situations like that where we had Aleister Crowley and the dark arts and
mm,
the nature of the circle myself and Paul had put down,
mm-hmm,
I think Ian was a bit wary, more so in the Palace Court
mm-hmm.
because of previous experiences that he's had to deal with.
Right. The sort of once bitten, twice shy kind of.
Yes,
Right.
yeah. But I
Okay.
mean, from our perspective, if it had gone wrong, it's right. Yeah, this is your department. Sort it out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I pay you the big bucks for. Um,
Yes, that's where you get paid more than us. I didn't say that.
you can't really call it a you can't really call it a gender row in that case, can you? Because you're all men, so maybe it's a
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
psychic row. I don't know. Um,
yeah. No, he's brilliant.
he is. He is. I do enjoy because he's not a flouncy sort of medium. He's very sort of black and white about things, and um,
Yes, yes. Yeah.
yeah, um,
What I like about Ian as well, though, if you get to a location, he's not picking anything up. He'll tell you. He said, "Look, guys, I'm not getting anything." Is that
yeah,
fair enough? Let's carry on walking.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good. That's good. He's not a show medium in that respect. He's a
No.
genuine sort of doing it for what he needs to be doing.
Yeah.
So, were there anywhere that you went in the hotel or in the True Crimes Museum that genuinely unnerved you?
Um, the sellers were unnerving for a non-paranormal reason.
Right.
Um, it's a good job they haven't invented smelly vision yet because there was a cracked sewer pipe
Ooh.
in the cellars.
Okay.
Yes, it was. And I mean, when we got back to our hotels that night, the first thing we had to do was strip off and throw everything in the
That
bath.
bad. Oh, okay.
Boots and trousers, anything that had been within an inch of the floor had to go into the
Right.
bath.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that was creepy from a non-paranormal sense.
Yeah.
Um, I the location, from mine and Paul's perspective, was quite quiet. I think Kai had the
Mm.
most fright with the shadow and the
Safe.
claustrophobia
Yeah.
element,
Yeah.
and the glitching on the Echovox app. But unfortunately for us, it was quite quiet.
Mm.
I mean, we had experiments running. I had an ITC experiment that didn't get featured
Hmm.
because, again, it didn't pick anything up. We had a laptop running for EVPs in another room in a completely remote segment of the hotel.
Yeah.
I think that was a time I felt the most freaked out, was at the end of the night walking to retrieve my laptop on my own in this huge hotel.
Yeah.
It did feel. I mean, all buildings feel creepy when you're on your own, especially when they're
Yeah.
derelict.
Yeah.
So you do get that eyes in the back of the neck syndrome when you
Yeah.
when you're walking in these buildings. So I think
One
that was the
sec.
most freaky. Okay.
Yeah. So you do. Yeah, I know what you mean about derelict buildings and the eyes in the back. Yeah, you do feel like someone's watching you, or and it's
Yeah,
completely different when there's light coming in and all of that. It's funny you say that there was nothing really. No, I didn't. When I went to, I haven't been to the hotel, but when I went to the True Crimes Museum, I didn't find it. There wasn't any bits of it that I found particularly. Um, I don't want to be in here. This feels quite malicious and malevolent and all that kind of
yes,
thing. You'd expect there to be more with the artifacts that were there, regardless of its history, the Crowley history and everything else. Just
yeah.
attachment to artifacts, you'd expect there to be something sinister almost lurking, but I actually didn't find it that way at all. I found it
No,
fascinating, and it's a very interesting museum to go to, especially if you're into crime and all of those kind of things. But um, I've got
and
into
people
sort of,
people interested in psychometry. I mean, you've got several exhibits there. I mean, the craze is a craze
yeah,
exhibit, isn't there?
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it, not that active for us the night we were there either.
mm,
I mean, we were there obviously because of the stories
mm,
that the Jenny, our researcher, had got, and also correlating that when we got there with the owner about the
mm,
skull moving. You can actually see the video I took from the locked off camera. Again, that's
mm.
that's on the can't even say it now. I told you I was going to get slip over the words. That's the tiredness kicking in from the weekend.
Bless you.
Yeah, the videos on the blog from the True Crimes segment.
Yeah,
You can actually see the skull, but it's definitely not moving.
yeah.
I'm
No, I
watching
believe
it.
you. I
I
believe you.
forgot I put it up on there. Yeah, it's not
So,
moving.
we still got some of the shows to run, I believe, on Ghost Chasers. It's
Yes.
not finished the run yet. You did say off air to me one of them you nearly died at.
Yes, not the location. It was en route. When we hit Europe, we were traveling towards Belgium. Well, we just got to Belgium, and
Mhm.
it started snowing really heavily.
Mhm.
We'd had a long trip from London, and we were approaching. Most of us were starting to doze, apart from Kilo, our data wrangler and driver.
Mhm.
And he pulled up to a junction. The roads had gone white at this point, and instead of, I think he'd forgotten himself for a moment. Instead of looking left because we
Right.
were on a foreign road before pulling out, he looked right. Went to pull out. If he'd have pulled out, well, as much as 3 seconds earlier, we'd have been hit by a car which was travelling. It looked like it was doing at least 80 miles an hour. They don't slow
Wow.
down for snow in Europe, do they?
No. No.
And yeah, the front of the van actually wobbled as the car went past. That's how close it was.
Blimey.
And Kilo just slammed his foot on the brake. I just sat there for a couple of minutes. He was white while we all were. It
I
was
bet.
a matter of seconds. If he'd have pulled out, if he'd have looked right, if we'd have got there a few seconds earlier, we'd have been taken out at 80 miles an hour. It was quite a frightening moment.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Sod all the spirits thing. Sod being stuck in a safe when you can't get out and everything else. That's probably more frightening than it just goes my old adage. I'm not scared of the dead. It's the living that scare me the most. And
That's
I think
right.
that just proves it. Um,
Yeah.
so we've still got some shows coming on Ghost Chasers. People obviously can catch up all the on-demand ones. Where do they go if they want to find out about any future projects from Team Impact and Ghost Chasers and Kai and Ian, all the stuff you're doing together?
Yeah, the easiest place with all the links is mine and Paul's website, so chrishowley.com or paulhobday.com.
Okay.
So you've got all our Twitter links on there, Instagram, Facebook. Um, links through to Team Impact. We put all the links up through to the on-demand for UK TV Play for current airing of Ghost Chasers. So if you just have a look through the sites, you'll find a link to wherever you want to get to, really.
Brilliant. Okay.
And Kind Underpants, of course, on my page.
I'm going to be sharing that on Facebook. I hope you don't mind.
No, it's a complete comedy moment, that was.
I'm going to be going and googling it after we've finished talking. I am that polite as a host. I didn't go and look it up whilst we've been talking. I am waiting. I am waiting until we're finished. Before
Enjoy.
So when I send him a message on Instagram saying, "Ha, I've seen you in your underpants," hopefully he'll know where that's come from.
Yeah.
Well, thank you ever so much for your time, Chris. I really appreciate you staying awake after you've been. You got paranormal hangovers, brass band hangovers, and everything else. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Nice to talk to you too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, if anyone wants to go and check out more of what Chris and his team are doing, do go and have a watch at the Ghost Chasers episodes. They are very authentic, if that makes sense. There's no fabrication of evidence or any of those things, and they're interesting places, especially in the UK. For a lot of them, we've probably visited or can visit very, very easily. So do go and check them out. Parasearch Radio shows on every night of the week. Tomorrow night you've got the KTPF Reload show. Do go and check it out. You can check out past episodes on our Spreaker page and on YouTube. But all that leaves me to say is have a good evening. Sleep tight. And don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.